Like, really, after Welch died, bro, that like, you know what I'm saying? Like, trigger something in the bro.
I had seen somebody make a post basically saying, like, this the man who had the, almost like half the low end walking on eggshells, and they called you like a one-man army.
The murder of Welch would seemingly become a defining moment in Tay's life, and after this is when he would really begin to earn his nickname, the Bully.
Let me see. I think I really turned my bully up, for real. I always was like, you feel me, like, doing my thing, but I really turned my bully up probably like when Welch died.
It would take less than a year for revenge to play out, but once he had recovered from the shooting, Tay Savage would return to the streets of Welch World, ready to show the whole city exactly why they would call him Trigger Happy Tay. In the early morning hours of Saturday the 5th of February 2011, Cess and her sister were out partying with some friends on the south side of Chicago. They had just left a party in the Auburn Gresham neighborhood and were headed to another party on South Shore. But what they probably didn't know was that Gresham was Tay's old stomping grounds that he still frequented. And according to police paperwork, Tay was allegedly riding around with his friend that night when he spotted Cess in her car. Around 2:05 AM, Cess got out of the car ahead of her friends as she apparently had to use the restroom. But as she stepped onto the street, Tay allegedly appeared from behind her friends, running in front of her holding a handgun. Before Cess even had time to react to what was happening, Tay allegedly shot her twice. And according to police paperwork, once she was already laying on the ground, Tay would allegedly stand over her, saying, "I told you, bitch," as he shot her several more times, leaving Cess bleeding out on the street as he next aimed the gun towards her sister and friends who were fleeing the scene in the car. Tay then allegedly shot at the car before fleeing himself on foot. Cess's sister and friends, who had fortunately escaped the scene unscathed, circled the block and then returned to help a wounded Cess, who was then taken to hospital by ambulance. But unfortunately, her injuries were devastating, and at 5:15 AM, Cess would be pronounced dead. Just over 2 months after Cess was murdered, on Sunday the 10th of April, at around 4:30 PM, her friend she was rumoured to have killed Welch with, Neef, real name Christopher Daniels, was driving his car on the 7400 block of South Vincennes Avenue when he stopped at a traffic light. While he was stopped, a man would exit another vehicle in front of Neef before beginning to fire into the car. According to reports by Chicago police, the shooter was Tay Savage. Neef would then attempt to escape the situation by putting his car in reverse, but this would cause him to crash into another vehicle. Meanwhile, Tay would allegedly keep shooting into the car, hitting Neef several times, and then fleeing the scene with his getaway driver before the police and paramedics arrived. Unfortunately, Neef was already in serious condition and would be pronounced dead in the hospital soon after. This was the second shooting on the same block within 2 weeks, and one of over a dozen shootings that took place in Chicago over that weekend, leaving some of the locals afraid to leave their homes and fearful of what was to come next, while the police were likely already connecting the dots behind the scenes with regards to the killing of Neef. For the time being, there was once again no arrests, despite the shooting taking place in front of numerous witnesses. But both the driver and the shooter on the hit were both wearing ski masks. A week after the death of Neef, Tay would be arrested due to being suspected of numerous gun-related incidents, including the murders of Cess and Neef. However, it seemed that the police simply didn't have enough evidence to charge him for those murders at the time, and instead he would be charged with 2 attempted murders in relation to the other incidents, leading him to eventually beating those charges, instead receiving an 18-month sentence for aggravated unlawful use of a weapon. In February 2012, a Welch World member would post on his Facebook about how Tay was about to have his trial, and eventually Tay would find himself back on the streets of the low end sometime in the latter half of 2012.
When I come home, I had to be 2 attempts come home, and man, one day we in a club, I run into Motor, you feel me? We rotate with him and shit. He, man, who Reese here with? He here with us. So you know, we on his ass, son, man. Hey, you feel me? Here with us.
Namely, Lil Reese, who was with Tay, and FYB J Main, who was with Motor. According to J Main, Lil Reese had previously come through his hood shooting at them as a result of a family feud they were having, and J Main wanted revenge, ultimately confronting Reese in the club. And then, as both crews were later leaving the club, they would see each other again, getting into a shootout, with J Main ducking under a hail of bullets. May 2013, something would happen that would arguably make all of these gangs even closer, as a beloved member would lose their life, and these gangs would formally build an alliance against their enemies. Tory Stewart, aka Snoop, on the 20th of May 2013, at around 8:20 PM, a freshly turned 20-year-old Snoop was driving in his car in the Lake Meadows neighborhood just north of Bronzeville, when somebody would open fire, shooting at his car several times, with one of the bullets reportedly hitting him in the head. Snoop was taken to hospital in critical condition, but would unfortunately be pronounced dead that night. This would later lead to some Redditors believing that Tay Savage himself might have killed Snoop, while others would rightfully challenge such claims, suggesting that Tay would have been arrested for the crime if there was genuine evidence. There's one thing that cannot be denied, and that's the fact that Tay Savage was incredibly active in the streets during this period. However, unfortunately for him, his activities would be attracting the attention of the authorities, and they were just one step behind, waiting for him to slip up.